Hey everyone, welcome to Dr. Frank's Finance World. I'm Dr. Frank, the bank, and I teach you something about finance so you can make some money on it in the future. We're on a series now, it's one I enjoy. It's called Net Present Value, and essentially we're evaluating projects for firms. So there's a number of the videos, so please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications if you want, so you get them as soon as they show up, and then look in the notes and links as we go back through time and try to make those better and give you a little more information. So the basics of it is essentially we're going to do a quick overview, talk about how we set up problems, if you will, for net present value, how we put them inside our calculator, the very basic method there. After you have the data in, you can calculate either the net present value or something called the internal rate of return. Finally, there's one about payback, which I call the farmer's method, but it's a pretty smart way to figure out if the project's going to make you any money or not. And then it's possible to have more than one internal rate of return, and that causes a problem for you. So we'll talk about that too. So anyway, the first question is, what is capital budget? It's the analysis of potential additions to fixed assets, also known as projects. They are long-term decisions, which is why they're very important for the firm. And they also many times involve large expenditures. So we have to put the numbers together in a way that is realistic so the firm can see if this might work or not. It's very, very important to any given firm's future. All of them do it one way or another. So what's the process? First process is we estimate the cash flows, actually, and that sort of looks like this. You end up with a timeline. We're going to do a real simple one here, where you put money in, and then you get money out for a certain period of time, and then you get your additional money back at the end. And for any of you who've looked at bonds, this is exactly how bonds are done. This is part of why I say the process of finance is a process that you use again and again and again out there. And ultimately for here, you can see that it does look a lot like a bond. We'll talk about how you calculate each of these, and actually how you put them together is part two of net present value. But we're going to estimate the inflows and outflows. We're going to assess the riskiness of them, determine whether this is a normal or a less risky or more risky part of the project. Look at the appropriate cost of capital. In other words, raising the money to invest here is not free. We have to pay a certain return on it, and that's called our cost of capital. And then we divide each of these by the cost of capital. This one we divide it by, they call it weighted average cost of capital. We divide it by WACC once because we bring it back 1 year. This one we divide it by 1 plus weighted average cost of one WACC squared because we bring it back for 2 years. And finally, this one would be 1 plus WACC, and you would actually bring it back for 3 years, because you're bringing it to year 2 and then to year 1 and then to time period 0. So anyway, we'll find the net present value or this internal rate of return. And ultimately what that means is if the value of these cash flows brought back through time is greater than the money we actually put into it, it will have a positive net present value and we will invest in the project. So there's also the possibility when we're looking at projects out there of having more than one. And some of them are independent. You would do any of them that you have the money for that would pay off for you, or they can be what we call mutually exclusive. And mutually exclusive is if the cash flows of one can be adversely impacted by the acceptance of the other. I like to think of this as, cities might get many, many bids for a building or for a bridge or something like that. But ultimately, they're only going to accept one. And so in that sense, it's mutually exclusive. By accepting one, you're not going to do the others. And of course, it would make no sense to create multiple bridges. All right, you might want to grab a calculator for some of this. I'm going to pull up the BA2 Plus emulator here in a second. You can go, this one has some calculators, although you have to kind of fight your way through. They call it calculator soup. It's a cool place to go. The Giga calculator one I sent you to here specifically is for net present value, and it allows you to adjust the number of cash flows, which is pretty helpful too, because not all projects are the same length. And of course, the ultimate process of bringing things back through time to figure out what they're worth is finance. Each of the cash flows is brought back through time, what the money cost you to invest in it. And if the sum of all those at the end, just like a bond, would be the present value or the price of the bond. For these, it's the net present value. Okay, so a couple of projects we'll look here. This one, it takes a long time to get your money back, which I believe is why they call it long L. And this is you get your money back quickly, short period of time to get your money back, which is why I think they call it S. But one interesting thing to note is they both invest the same amount of money. But if you look at this one, you actually get a total of $150 or $1 million or whatever it is, and this one you only get 140. And the reason why that's important is because this project ends up being superior to this project simply because you get your money sooner. So that's something to keep in mind as you go through net present value projects. So if you put this in the calculator here, they gave us that our WACC was the 10%. Many times we have to calculate that, but that's fine. That means that we're going to bring this one back by 1.1. Let me get this started up again. Bring this one back by 1.1. This one you'll divide and bring back by 1.1 squared. And this one you'll divide and bring back by 1.1 cubed. And when you do, so we can get the 3 in there on that one. When you do, each of those flows will be worth this dollar amount. And then when you add the positive cash flows to the negative, you find out the project still has a $18.79 positive net present value. It means it would add that much value to the firm. And therefore, because it is positive, we would actually want to do that project. The way that looks, and here a second here in the cash flow function of your calculator, and I have that set up for us here. By the way, let me show you something before I clear this out. I put in the short one here, but at $100, and then it was 70 and it occurred one time. The next one was 50 and it occurred one time. And the third cash flow was 20 and it occurred one time. And then to actually calculate the net present value, I hit in the NPV, and it was 10. And when I came down and computed it, I got this. One other quick thing, the first cash flow was negative, the others were positive. But we did come up with a net present value of $19.98, which is actually greater than the long-term getting our money back one was. But let's a good chance to just do one period in the calculator here. So most important thing, as is typical for BA2 plus calculators, is clear it. And the way you clear it this time, is you hit the second button and then the CE/C, which is the second gets you up to clear work. And now all of the cash flows in this calculator have been cleared out. So we'll put in once again that the first one is 100 negative, and you enter it, and that one doesn't have a frequency because you only have one initial cash flow. And then you will have a cash flow this time of 10 for the first cash flow. You enter it, and it asks how many times do you want to have 10, and this time it's just 1, so we leave the frequency at 1. The second one is 60, so we put in that cash flow, and the frequency of cash flow 2 is just 1. And then finally, when we put in cash flow 3 at 80 and enter it, that occurs once. So to find the net present value then, we're done with the cash flow part, I have to hit the NPV key. It says, what I do you want? And it gave us 10%. So we enter the 10. And when we come down and compute it, we get the same answer they did. So that's how you actually do net present value on your calculator. It's part of the non-constant cash flow. If this was all one constant cash flow, it would actually be just like a bond problem. But at any rate, so the rationale for it is you're looking at your inflows and the cost of those. You're trying to figure out if you gain or lose money after, by the time you include the cost of the money you had to invest. If it's a gain, you keep it, accept it. If it's a negative, zero negative, realize it. But if certainly if it's a negative, investing in the project would lose money for the firm and you would not do it. So if projects are mutually exclusive, except the project with the highest NPV, that would be the S project in this case. It's the one that adds most value. And if they were independent, you would actually accept both of them because both of them have a positive net present value. So anyway, don't forget to send emails and comments. Appreciate it. If you have any Ask Dr. Frank stuff, be sure to let me know. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.